Hi there. Well, after a bitterly cold and wintry week across the British Isles, in which we saw minus 23 degrees Celsius recorded at Braemar, the coldest night since 1995, it does look like things are going to turn milder and more unsettled over the coming week and into the weekend as we see low pressure begin to assert its dominance a bit more coming in from the Atlantic. So looking ahead at the jet stream over the next few days, it's going to be quite active, moving in from the west, bringing some quite frequent areas of low pressure in, bringing some heavy and persistent rainfall at times. There will be some brief ridges of high pressure that come through in between the lows, but all in all, they're going to be some quite frequent lows. And you can see into the weekend a quite deep area of low pressure and upper trough developing out to the northwest of us, and then some quite active and strong areas of jet stream coming in towards the weekend. So all in all, a quite unsettled week with frequent areas of rain spreading in from the west. So looking at that in a little bit more detail, this is Tuesday evening. We saw this front come eastwards across the country during Tuesday afternoon. That should have cleared to the east. There may be a few odd showers still lingering around during the evening, but they'll quickly clear away. And then we've got this next area of low pressure out to the west, ready to push in and push a front eastwards across the British Isles during Wednesday. So you can see that coming eastwards here, clearing many northern areas by the end of Wednesday. And actually it will brighten up in parts of northern Britain and Ireland during Wednesday afternoon. But then there's this next area of low pressure that pushes in from the south, pushing this band of rain northwards, and then centred across Ireland by the end of the day on Wednesday. And quite breezy as well, some quite tight isobars, particularly across the Irish Sea and parts of coastal Wales and coastal Ireland. It could be quite breezy by the end of the day on Wednesday. It will turn quite mild though in the southeast. Behind this warm front we'll see some quite mild air overnight across southern and eastern areas, and that continuing through into Thursday morning as well. So quite an unsettled start to the day on Thursday. We've got this area of low pressure here. That lifts northwards through the day, pushing this rain northwards and then pushing this band of rain eastwards across the country as well. So quite an unsettled period of weather, but by the end of the day Thursday, that fronts out to the east. We see a slight ridge of high pressure building, and it will be a touch cooler behind this cold front as well. So perhaps quite a chilly night under that ridge of high pressure. There should be plenty of clear skies, and that will allow temperatures to get that bit lower. Saying that though, most places should remain frost-free. Perhaps the high ground of northern Scotland will see temperatures get down to below zero. For many places it will just be a chilly night with perhaps a touch of grass frost, but generally temperatures will stay just above freezing for Thursday night into Friday. So you can see by Friday morning there's quite a deep area of low pressure out to the west of the British Isles, which is going to push some quite heavy rain and strong winds with these tight isobars across the British Isles during Friday. So you can see that here, pushing this rain eastwards, some quite heavy rain across the western high ground, beginning to peter out a little bit as it moves further east. It's generally going to be a bit patchier, and then clearing to the north during Saturday as that low pressure pulls away to the north. A few showers just lingering around by the end of Saturday, but generally the bulk of the heavier rain will be during Friday afternoon and Friday evening and overnight. It will turn a little bit dry for a time during Saturday night, but there's this next area of low pressure centred down here near northern Spain, but that is going to push this front northwards across southern and eastern England during Saturday night and through Sunday, and then that will lift northwards over the course of Sunday. So all in all, quite an unsettled week. There's a lot of different areas of rainfall moving through from the west as the jet stream just continues to push more areas of low pressure in off the Atlantic. So giving an idea of what sort of rainfall amounts we're going to see, this is the rainfall accumulation from the start of Tuesday, so the start of today, through until the end of Sunday. And you can see it's really western high ground areas that are going to see the bulk of this heavy rain. So parts of western Scotland, the Lake District, Wales, the high ground of southwest England, and parts of southern Ireland as well, in these pink colours, seeing plus 70 millimetres plus. So many places widely seeing 70 to 90 millimetres. Some places could see up to 120 millimetres by the end of Sunday, particularly across the high ground of Scotland and then the high ground of parts of South Wales as well. So quite a wet period over this week for those places. Further east, the rainfall amounts do tail off a little bit. We're closer to 10 to 12 mil across parts of East Anglia, South East England, and perhaps parts of eastern Scotland as well, but still a relatively wet period with frequent bands of rain coming through, but the bulk of the rainfall is going to be across the western high ground. So looking ahead into the early part of next week, there's a little bit of uncertainty for the first few days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, as to how quickly and how far north this area of high pressure builds. So this is the first scenario. At this stage, this looks like the most likely scenario, for the early part of next week. We'll generally see high pressure centred over southern Europe, ridging northwards into the British Isles, bringing some dry, quite sunny and quite mild temperatures as well for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Potentially in this scenario could be looking at highs of 14, 15, maybe 16 degrees in places. So quite a mild and dry period in the south and east. You can see further northwest though, this area of low pressure near Iceland is going to continue pushing fronts, areas of rainfall and cloud, and some quite breezy conditions across parts of Scotland, Ireland, parts of Wales and northern England as well. So that's the first scenario with this northwest-southeast split in the wetter and drier conditions. The second scenario, which probably isn't quite as likely, but still potential and still something to bear in mind, is that this area of low pressure could just be that bit further south. The high pressure hasn't quite built as far in to the British Isles. So what we see is a more widely unsettled and breezy picture across the British Isles, and it will be cooler in this scenario as well, with the warm air not quite making it that bit further north. Still fairly settled, and still overall the pattern is very similar. It's just that this low pressure has pushed that rain a little bit further south during the early part of next week. So one to bear in mind, but like I said, that first scenario is probably just that bit more likely. It's been a bit more consistent in the outlook for next week. Either way though, it does look like that high pressure by the end of the week will build more widely across the British Isles, so a more widely settled picture across the whole of the region. And with high pressure and clear skies overnight, we could see a return to the risk of seeing frosts in places. Daytime temperatures not quite as cold, but one to bear in mind that we could see the risk of a few frosts in places by the end of next week and into the weekend. So with all the uncertainty surrounding the early part of next week and all these frequent areas of low pressure coming through this week, the best way to stay on top of the forecast is to speak directly to one of our forecasters. They're available every day from 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. on the number shown on screen, and we'll be able to chat you through any uncertainties in the forecast, any developments as to how quickly the rain's coming in, whether it's speeded up or slowed down. So they're the best way of staying on top of the forecast, and we'll be able to help you out with any of your questions. So looking in a bit more detail a little bit further ahead, this is an ensemble forecast for Bedford for the surface pressure. So all these different grey lines are a different run of the model with slightly different conditions to give an idea of confidence and the most likely scenarios. So you can see over the next couple of days they're in pretty much good agreement about these low pressures coming in, followed by a ridge, followed by another area of low pressure, before then beginning to pick up into the weekend. And then that period in the early part of next week is where most of the uncertainty is as to how quickly north that area of high pressure builds in from the confidence. So you can see there's a reasonable amount of spread here. Some of these members are going for some quite deep lows coming through, in fact deeper than the lows over the next couple of days. So it is one to bear in mind that it's not set in stone that it will turn drier straight away in the early part of next week. There is potential for this slightly more unsettled period, but as you can see, there's quite a lot more uncertainty with some members going for some quite strongly built ridges coming in from the continent. So one to keep an eye on during the early part of next week. You can see towards the end of the week and into the weekend, those lines come together a little bit more. There's not really any members going for any deep lows coming through. Generally high pressure built, and actually there's less spread in the models as well. So increasing confidence in fact towards the weekend. It's mainly just this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday period of next week when there's just that bit of uncertainty, and it's the one to keep an eye on in the forecast. So looking a bit further ahead and a bit further afield across the rest of Europe as well, this is the pressure anomaly pattern for next week. And you see these red colours here generally showing above average pressure, so higher pressure than normal, as that high pressure becomes very dominant across most of Europe and possibly ridging into the British Isles as well, as we mentioned. So widespread below average rainfall amounts across Europe, and probably into the British Isles as well. But it is that question, if that low pressure just lingers that bit longer and comes further southwards, it might not be quite as dry as that looks, especially in the north and west. So one just to be a bit cautious on for particularly the early part of next week. But elsewhere, pretty good confidence that it's going to be pretty dry as that high pressure becomes much more dominant. It is staying wetter across Scandinavia and Eastern Europe. You might have seen the chart a couple of slides ago with that area of snow across Eastern Europe as well, dividing this much milder air to the west and the much colder air out to the east. You can see well below average across Finland, Western Russia, parts of the Baltic states into Ukraine, and you can see well below average across further east, across Russia as well. So bitterly cold there, but there's this big divide down the sort of central areas of Eastern Europe, where to the west of it, it's actually incredibly mild. We're going to see some well above average temperatures as that high pressure builds, a southerly flow bringing that in from the south. And again, a little bit of uncertainty over the British Isles. If that low pressure out to the west is a bit more dominant, it might not be as mild as this, but this is the most likely scenario that we will see well above average temperatures during next week. So looking ahead to the first week of March, high pressure continuing to build over the Europe and into the British Isles, in fact moving a little bit further west and becoming more dominant over the course of the week. So rainfall amounts still staying well below average for many places. We do see some slightly above average rainfall amounts in parts of Scandinavia and perhaps parts of the Mediterranean as well, but generally it is staying relatively settled with below average rainfall. In terms of temperatures, we might actually see a return to something slightly cooler as we see some cold air drifting east. So the return to the potential for some marginal overnight frost, but not nearly as cold as what it has been over the past couple of weeks, but slightly cooler than what we're expecting to see next week. Still warmer than average further north and west though, so actually parts of Scotland and northern England could stay slightly above average during that week as well. Now looking ahead into the following week, the second week of March, it does look like things might turn a little bit more unsettled. We see high pressure becoming mainly confined to southeastern Europe, where rainfall will be below average, but actually we could see a bit more of a westerly flow affect the British Isles, bringing outbreaks of rain through. So turning a little bit more unsettled into that second week of March. You can see here closer to average, perhaps still slightly below average in places, but still wetter than the couple of weeks before that. See well below average still around southeastern Europe as that high pressure continues to be dominant there. So to summarise, remaining wet and mild through the rest of this week. It is going to be quite unsettled at times as that low pressure comes through from the west, but generally it will turn more settled through next week, with high pressure beginning to build, becoming quite widely dominant by the end of next week. But then hints of a return to more unsettled weather towards the middle part of March, but still a little bit of uncertainty on that at this stage. So thanks for watching. As ever, you can keep up to date with our day-to-day forecasts for the UK and East Anglia on our social media channel, and don't forget to leave a comment below. Thanks for watching.